Chapter 14. A Dress Rehearsal. It was Saturday, but despite that glorious fact, William, standing at the dining-room window and surveying the world at large, could not for the moment think of anything to do. From the window he saw the figure of his father, who sat peacefully on the lawn reading a newspaper. William was not fond of his own society. He liked company of any sort. He went out to the lawn and stood by his father's chair. "You've not got much hair right on the top of your head, father," he said pleasantly and conversationally. There was no answer. "I said you've not got much hair on the top of your head," repeated William in a louder tone. "I heard you," said his father coldly. "Oh," said William, sitting down on the ground. There was silence for a minute. Then William said in friendly tones, "I only said it again 'cause I thought you didn't hear the first time. I thought you'd have said 'oh' or 'yes' or 'no' or something if you'd heard." There was no answer, and again, after a long silence, William spoke. "I didn't mind your not saying 'oh' or 'yes' or 'no,'" he said, "only that was what made me say it again, 'cause with you not saying it, I thought you'd not heard." Mr. Brown arose and moved his chair several feet away. William, on whom hints were wasted, followed. "I was reading a tale yesterday," he said, "about a man what's legs got bit off by sharks." Mr. Brown groaned. "William," he said politely, "pray don't let me keep you from your friends." "Oh, no, that's quite all right," said William. "Well, perhaps Ginger is looking for me. Well, I'll finish about the man and the sharks after tea. You'll be here then, won't you?" "Please don't trouble," said Mr. Brown, with sarcasm that was entirely lost on his son. "Oh, it's not a trouble," said William as he strolled off. "I like talking to people." Ginger was strolling disconsolately down the road, looking for William. His face brightened when he saw William in the distance. "Hello, William!" "Hello, Ginger!" In accordance with their usual ceremonial greeting, they punched each other and wrestled with each other till they rolled onto the ground. Then they began to walk along the road together. "I've not got to stop with you long," said Ginger gloomily. "My mother's got an old sale of work in her garden, and she wants me to help." "Huh!" said William scornfully. "You helping at a sale of work? You? Ha, ha!" "She's going to give me 5 shillings," went on Ginger coldly. William slightly modified his tone. "Well, I never said you can't help, did I?" he said in a more friendly voice. "She said I needn't go for about half an hour. What'll we do? Dig for hidden treasure?" 2 months ago, William and his friends had been fired with the idea of digging for hidden treasure. From various books they had read, Ralph the Reckless, Hunted to Death, The Quest of Captain Terrible, etc., they had gathered that the earth is chock full of buried treasure if only one takes the trouble to dig deep enough. They had resolved to dig every inch of their native village, collect all the treasure they could find, and with it buy a desert island on which they proposed to spend the rest of their lives unhampered by parents and schoolmasters. They had decided to begin with the uncultivated part of Ginger's back garden, and to buy further land for excavation with the treasure they found in the back garden. Their schemes were not narrow. They had decided to purchase and to pull down all the houses in the village as their treasure grew and more land was acquired for digging. But they had dug unsuccessfully for 2 months in Ginger's back garden and were beginning to lose heart. They had not realized that digging was such hard work, or that 10 feet square of perfectly good land would yield so little treasure. Conscientiously they carried on the search, but it had lost its first fine, careless rapture, and they were glad of any excuse for avoiding it. "Dig in your back garden with all those sale-of-work people messing about, interrupting, and getting in the way?" said William sternly. "Not much." "All right," said Ginger, relieved. "I only suggested it. Well, shall we hunt for smugglers?" There was a cave in the hillside just beneath the road, and though the village in which William and Ginger lived was more than 100 miles inland, William and Ginger were ever hopeful of finding a smuggler, or at any rate traces of a smuggler, in the cave. They searched it carefully every day. As William said, it's only likely the really cunning ones wouldn't stay sitting in their caves by the sea all the time. They'd know folks would be on the lookout for 'em there. They'd bring their things here, where no one expect 'em. Why, with a fine cave like this, there's sure to be smugglers." When tired of hunting for smugglers, or traces of smugglers, they adopted the characters of smugglers themselves, and carried their treasure, consisting of stones, up the hillside to conceal it in the cave, or fled for their lives to the cave with imaginary soldiers in pursuit. From the cover of the cave, Bill the smuggler often covered the entire hillside with the dead bodies of soldiers. In these frays the gallant smugglers never received even the slightest scratch. With ever fresh hope they searched the cave again. Ginger found a stone that he said had not been there yesterday, and must have been left as a kind of signal. But William said that he distinctly recognized it as having been there yesterday, and the matter dropped. After a brief and indecisive discussion as to how they should spend the 5 shillings that Ginger's mother had said she would give him, they occupied themselves in crawling laboriously on their stomachs in and out of the cave, so as to be unperceived by the soldiers who were on the watch above and below. At last Ginger, moved not so much by his conscience as by fears of forfeiting his 5 shillings, set off sadly homewards, and William set off along the road in the opposite direction. He walked slowly, his hands in his pockets, dragging his shoes in the dust in a manner which his mother frequently informed him brought the toes through in no time. When he came to the school he stopped, attracted by the noise that came through the open window of the classroom. They were preparing for a dress rehearsal of "The Pageant of Ancient Britain," which was to be performed the next month. William, who was not in the cast, looked with interest through the window. Ancient Britons, in various stages of skins and woad and grease paint, stood about the room, or leapfrogged over each other's backs, or wrestled with each other in corners. William espied a particular enemy at the other end of the room. He put his head through the window. "Hello, Monkey Brand!" he called in his strident, devastating voice. Miss Carter, mistress of the second form, raised herself wearily from arranging the skin of an infant Ancient Briton. "I wish you wouldn't," she began testily, then her voice sinking into hopelessness. "Oh, it's William Brown." William, ignoring her, put his fingers to his lips, and still gazing belligerently at his enemy, emitted a deafening whistle. Miss Carter put her hands to her ears. "William!" she said irritably. William wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Beg pardon," he said mechanically and without feeling, as he withdrew his head and prepared to retire. "Oh, 1 minute, William. What are you doing just now?" William inserted his untidy head in the window again. "Me?" he said. "Oh, nothing, just nothing." "Well, I wish you'd come and be an Ancient Briton just for the dress rehearsal. It won't be long. But so many of 'em can't come this afternoon, and it's so difficult to arrange how they are to stand with only 3/4 of them here. You needn't be made up, but just put this skin on." She held up a small skin carelessly in her hand. William looked round the room with his sternest and most disapproving scowl. "Have I got her come in with all those boys all over the place, and change with all those boys bothering me all the time, so's I don't know what I'm doing, and—" Miss Carter was in a bad temper. She threw the skin irritably at William through the window. "Oh, change where you like," she snapped, "if you'll be back here in 5 minutes." William took the skin eagerly. "Oh, yes, I will," he promised. Then he rolled up the skin and stuffed it under his arm. It instantly changed into a bale of precious but vague contraband material. Glancing sternly round for soldiers, William crept cautiously and silently down to his cave. There he drew a sigh of relief, placed his gun in a corner, and changed into the skid. Once clad in the skin, his ordinary clothes became the precious but vague contraband material. He crept to the entrance, glanced furtively round, then wrapped his clothes into a bundle, and looked around for some place of concealment. On the ground at the further end of the cave was a large piece of paper in which he and Ginger had once brought their lunch. Still, with many furtive glances around, he wrapped up his clothes and concealed the bundle on a shelf of rock in a corner of the cave. Then he took up his gun, shot 2 soldiers who were just creeping towards the entrance of the cave, walked to the doorway, shot again at a crowd of soldiers who fled in panic terror at his approach. Then, resplendent in his skin and drunk with heroism and triumph, he swaggered up the hillside and into the school. As an ancient Briton, he was not an unqualified success, and more than once Miss Carter regretted her casual invitation. William considered the rehearsal as disappointing as the rehearsal considered him, just standing about and singing and talking, and no fighting or shouting or nothing. He was glad he wasn't an ancient Briton, if that's all the poor things could do. However, at last it was over, and he crept again furtively down the hillside to his private dressing-room. Ginger was standing near the cave entrance. "What have you been doing all this time?" he began. Then, as his gaze took in William's costume, his mouth opened. "Crumbs!" he said. "I'm an ancient Briton," said William airily. "They just wanted me to go and be an ancient Briton up at the school, and—" "Well," interrupted Ginger excitedly, "while you've been away, I've found 'em at last." "What?" said William. "Smugglers," said Ginger excitedly. "Smugglers' things." "Golly!" said William, equally thrilled. "Where?" "In the cave. When I came to look for you, and I couldn't find you, and I looked around the cave again, and I found 'em." A sudden fear chilled William's enthusiasm. "What were they?" "Clothes and things. I thought I wouldn't look at 'em properly till you came. They was wrapped up in that old paper we brought our food in last week." The ancient Briton looked at him sternly and accusingly. "Yes, well, they were my clothes, what I'd changed out of, that's what they were. You're just a bit too clever taking people's clothes for smugglers' things. Anyway, I'm just getting cold with only a skin on, so just please give me these smugglers' things so I can put 'em on." Ginger's jaw dropped. I took 'em home. I didn't want to leave 'em about here in case someone else found 'em. I hid 'em behind a tree in our garden." The ancient Briton's gaze became still more stern. "Well, perhaps you'll kindly get 'em for me out of your garden, for I die of cold, dressed in only a skin. I should think the ancient Britons all died of cold if they felt like what I feel like. You're just a bit too clever with other people's smugglers' things, and suppose Miss Carter comes down for her skin, and what do you think I'll look like then, dressed in nothing?" "All right," said Ginger, "I'll get 'em. I won't be a minute, if you will leave your clothes all behind the cave looking exactly like smugglers' things." He was gone, and William sat shivering in a corner of the cave, dressed in his ancient Briton costume. The glamour of the cave was gone. William felt that he definitely disliked smugglers. The only people he disliked more than he disliked smugglers were ancient Britons, for whom he now felt a profound scorn and loathing. In about 10 minutes' time Ginger returned. He was empty-handed, and there was a look of consternation on his face. "William," he said meekly, "I'm awfully sorry. It's been sold. They thought it was meant for the rummage sale, and they've took it in and sold it." William was speechless with indignation. "Well," he said at last, "you've gone and sold all my clothes. And now what do you think's going to happen to me? That's just what I'd like to know. If you don't mind telling me, what's going to happen to me? Perhaps if you sold all my clothes, you'd kindly tell me what's going to happen to me getting colder and colder. Perhaps you'd like me to freeze to death. How am I going to get home? And if I don't get home, how am I going to get anything to eat? And if I don't get anything to eat, how am I going to live? I'm dying of cold now. Well, I only hope you'll be sorry then, when probably you'll be being hung for murdering me." William returned to earth from his flights of fancy. "Well, now, perhaps you'll kindly get my clothes back." "How can I?" said Ginger, with the air of one goaded beyond endurance. "Well, you can go and find out who bought 'em, I suppose, only you needn't tell 'em whose they was." Again Ginger departed, and again the ancient Briton sat shivering and gazing sternly and accusingly around the cave. After a short interval Ginger appeared again, breathless with running. "Mr. Groves bought it, William, from Wayside Cottage. I don't know how I'm to get 'em back, though, William." William sighed. "I'd better come with you," he said wearily. "'Sides, I shall probably get froze into a glacier or something if I stay in here any more." The ancient Briton gazed furtively round him from the cave door, without that bravado and swagger generally displayed by Bill the smuggler. The coast was clear. The two boys crept out. "When I get to the road, I'll crawl on my stomach in the ditch like as if I was a smuggler, then no one'll see me." Ginger walked dejectedly along the road, while the ancient Briton made a slow and very conspicuous progress in the ditch beside him, ejaculating irascibly as he went, "Well, I've just done with smugglers and with ancient Britons. I'll never look at another smuggler or an ancient Briton while I live. If you hadn't been so jolly clever running off with other people's clothes and selling 'em, I shouldn't be crawling along and scratching myself and cutting myself and eating mud. Now," in a voice of pure wonder, "how do ancient Britons get about, I don't know, all shivering with cold and scratching themselves and cutting themselves?" Wayside Cottage was fortunately for the ancient Briton on the outskirts of the village. The front door was conveniently open. There was a small garden in front, and a longer garden behind, with a little corrugated iron building at the end. "Come on," said William, "let's go and get 'em back." "Are you going to ask him for 'em?" said Ginger. "No, I'm not. I don't want everyone in this village talking about it," said William sternly. "I just want to get 'em back quietly and put 'em on, and no one know anything about it. I don't want anyone talking about it." No one was about. They gazed at the stairs from the open doorway. "They'll be upstairs," said William in a hoarse whisper. "Clothes are always upstairs. Now come very quietly. Creep upstairs." Ginger followed him loyally, fearfully, reluctantly, and they went upstairs. Every time Ginger hit a stair rod or made a stair creak, William turned round with a stern and resonant "Shush!" At last they reached the landing. William cautiously opened the door and peeped within. It was a bedroom, and it was empty. "Come on," whispered William, with the cheerfulness of the born optimist. "They're sure to be here." They entered and closed the door. "Now," said William, "we'll look in all the drawers, and then we'll look in the wardrobe." They began to open the drawers one by one. Suddenly Ginger said, "Hush!" There was the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs. They drew nearer the door. "Crumbs!" gasped William. "Under the bed! Quick!" As they disappeared under the bed, the door opened, and a little old gentleman came in. He looked round at the open drawers and frowned. "How curious!" he said, as he shut them. "How very curious!" Then he hummed to himself, straightened his collar at the glass, took a few little dancing steps around the room, and then stood irresolute, his hand on his chin. "Now, what did I come up for?" he said. "What did I come up for? Oh, a handkerchief." All might have been well had not the ancient Briton at this moment succumbed to the united effects of cold and dust, and emitted a resounding sneeze. "Bless my soul!" said the old gentleman. "Bless my—" He dived underneath the bed, and seizing hold of William's bare and muddy foot, he pulled. But William had firm hold of the further leg of the bed, and the old gentleman, exerting his utmost strength, only succeeded in pulling the bed across the room, with William still firmly attached to it. But this treatment infuriated William. "If you only kindly stop dragging me about on my stomach," he began, then emerged, stern and dusty, and arranging his skimpy and disheveled skin. You thief!" said the old man. "I'm not a thief," said William. "I'm an ancient—" But the old man made a dash at him, and William dodged and fled out of the doorway. Ginger was already halfway downstairs. The old man was delayed, first by the door, which William banged in his face, and secondly by the fact that he slipped on the top stair and rolled down to the bottom. There he sat up, looked for his spectacles, found them, adjusted them, and gazed round the hall, still seated on the hall mat. The two boys were nowhere to be seen. Muttering, "Dear, dear, and bless my soul! Let me see, what was it I wanted? A handkerchief." The old man began to ascend the stairs. But William and Ginger had not gone out of the front door. A group of Ginger's mother's friends could be plainly seen passing the little gateway, and in panic William and Ginger had dashed out of the back door into the little garden, and into the corrugated iron building. A lady dressed in an artist's smock, a paintbrush in her hand, looked up from an easel. "Please don't come in quite so roughly," she said disapprovingly. "I don't like rough little boys." She looked William up and down, and her disapproval seemed to deepen. "Well," she said stiffly, "it doesn't seem to me quite the costume. I shouldn't have thought the vicar— However, you'd better stay, now you've come. Is the other little boy your friend? He must sit down quietly and not disturb us. You may just look at the picture first for a treat." Bewildered, but ready to oblige her, William wandered round and looked at it. It seemed to consist of a chaos of snow and polar bears. "It's to be called the Frozen North," she said proudly. "Now you must stand in the attitude of one drawing a sleigh. So, the expression more gentle, please. I must say I do not care for the costume, but the vicar must know. I'm an ancient—" began William, and then decided to take the line of least resistance and be the Frozen North. The lady painted in silence for some time, occasionally looking at William's rather mangy skin, and saying disapprovingly, "No, I must say I do not, but of course the vicar—" Just as the charm of novelty was disappearing from the procedure, and he was devising means of escape, another lady came in. "Busy, dear?" she said, and then she adjusted her lorgnettes, and she, too, looked disapprovingly at William. "My dear," she said, "isn't that rather—well, of course, I know you artists are—well, bohemian and all that, but—" The artist looked worried. "My dear," she said, "I showed the vicar the picture yesterday, and he said that he had a child's Eskimo costume, and he'd find a boy to fit in and send it round for a model. But I'd an idea that the Eskimos dressed more completely than that, hadn't you?" "I'm an ancient—" began William, and stopped again. "You remember Mrs. Parks asking for money to buy clothes for her boy?" went on the artist as she painted. "Well, I got John to go to that sale of work this afternoon, and got a suit from the rummage sale, and he got quite a good suit, and I've just sent it round to her. Do stand still, little boy. You know, dear, I wish I felt happier about this—costume, yet I feel I ought not to criticize, and even in my mind, anything the dear vicar— "Well, I'll be quite frank," said the visitor. "I don't care for it, and I do think that artists can't be too careful. Any suggestion of the nude is so—well, don't you agree with me? I'm surprised at the vicar." The artist held out half a crown to William. "You may go," she said coldly. "Take the costume back to the vicar, and I don't think I shall require you again." At that moment the little old man came in. He started as his eye fell on William and Ginger. "The thief!" he said excitedly. "The thief! Catch him! Catch him!" William dashed to the doorway, upsetting the old man and a wet canvas on his way. The old man landed on top of the canvas and sat there murmuring, "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, what a day!" and looking for his glasses. The visitor pursued the two of them half-heartedly to the gate, and then returned to help in the work of separating the old gentleman from the wet canvas. William and Ginger sat in a neighboring ditch and looked at each other breathlessly. "Parks," said Ginger, "that's the shop at the end of the village." "Yes," said William, "and I'm just about sick of crawling in ditches, and what's wrong with it, I'd like to know?" he went on, looking down indignantly at his limp skin. "It's all right, not as clothes, but as a kind of dress-up thing, it's all right, as good as that old pinafore she was wearing, and I jolly nearly said so. And thief, too. Well, I wouldn't go inside that house again, not if they asked me. Anyway," his expression softened. "Anyway, I got half a crown." His expression grew bitter once more. "Half a crown, and not even a pocket to put it in. Come on to Parks." William returned to the ditch. They only passed a little girl and her small brother. "Look, Algy," said the little girl. "Look at him. He's a loony, and the other's his keeper. He think he's a frog, maybe, and that's why he goes in ditches, and he doesn't wear no clothes." William straightened himself. "I'm an ancient—" he began, but at sight of his red and muddy face, surmounted by its crest of muddy hair, the little girl fled screaming. "Come on, Algy. He'll get yer and eat yer if you don't—" Algy's screams reinforced hers, and William disconsolately returned to the ditch as the screams, still lusty, faded into the distance. "I'm just getting a bit sick of this," muttered the Ancient Briton. They reached Park's. William lay concealed behind the hedge, and Ginger wandered round the shop, reconnoitering. "Go in," goaded William, in a hoarse whisper from the hedge. "Go in and get 'em. Say you fetch a policeman. Make 'em give you 'em. Fight 'em. Take 'em. You let 'em. I can't stand this much longer. I'm cold and I'm wet. I feel as if I've been an Ancient Briton for years and years. Hurry up. Are you going to get me my clothes?" "Oh, shut up," said Ginger miserably. "I'm doing all I can." "Doing all you can, are you? Well, you're not doing much but walking around and round the shop. Do you think if you go on walking around and round the shop, my clothes will come out of themselves? Come walking out to you? Because if you think that—" "Shut up!" At this moment a small boy walked out of the shop. "Hello," said Ginger, with a fatuous smile of friendship. "Hello," said the boy, ungraciously. Ginger moistened his lips and repeated the fatuous smile. "Have you got any new clothes today?" The boy gave a fairly good imitation of the fatuous smile. "No," he said. "Have you? Don't go spoiling your face for me. It's beautiful, but don't waste it on me." Then, whistling, he prepared to walk away from Ginger down the road. Desperately, Ginger stopped him. "I'll give you—" He swallowed then, with an effort, made the nobler offer. "I'll give you 5 shillings if—" "Yes," said the boy suddenly, "if you'll give me those clothes the lady what paints sent you today." "Give me the 5 shillings, then?" "I won't give you the money till you give me the clothes." "Oh, won't you? Well, I won't give you the clothes till you give me the money." They stared hostilely at each other. "Get my clothes," said the irate voice from the ditch. "Punch him. Do anything to him. Get my clothes." The boy looked round with interest into the ditch. "Look at him!" he shrieked mirthfully. "Look at him! Naked, just dressed in a muff! Look at him!" William rose with murder in his face. Ginger hastily pressed the 5 shillings into the boy's hand. "Get 'em quick," he said. The boy retreated to the shop and closed the door except for a small crack. Through that crack he shouted, "We didn't want no narsy, mangy, mouldy, cast-off clothes from no one. We gived 'em to Johnson's up the village." Then he banged the door. William, in fury, kicked the door, and a crowd of small boys collected. William, perceiving them, fled through the hedge and into the field. The small boys followed, uttering derisive cries. "Look at him! Look at him! He's a cannibal! He's got no clothes! He's out of a circus! He's balmy! He's wearing his mother's fur!" William turned on them in fury. "I'm an ancient—" he began, rushing upon them, and they fled in panic. William and Ginger sat down behind a haystack. "Well, you're very clever at getting back my clothes, aren't you?" said William, with heavy sarcasm. "I'm getting just about sick of your clothes," said Ginger gloomily. "Sick of 'em?" echoed William. "I only wish I'd gotten to be sick of. I'm just sick of not having 'em, and walking about, and prickles and stones, and scratching myself, and shivering with cold. That boy just better wait till I get my clothes, and then—" His eyes gleamed darkly with visions of future vengeance. "Well," he turned to Ginger, "and what we going to do now?" "Dunno," said Ginger despondently. "Well, where's Johnson's?" "Mrs. Johnson's my aunt's charwoman," said Ginger wearily. "I know where she lives." William rose with a determined air. "Come on," he said. "If we don't got 'em this time," said Ginger, as they started on their furtive journey, "I'm going home." "Oh, are you?" said William sternly. "Well, then, you're going in this Ancient Briton's thing, and I'm going in your clothes. You lost my clothes, and if you don't get 'em back, you can give me yours. That's fair, isn't it?" "Oh, shut up," said Ginger, in the tone of one who has suffered all that it's possible to suffer, and can suffer no more. "It's that 5 shillings that I keep thinking of. 5 shillings! And for nothing. "And calling my clothes mouldy," said William, with equal indignation. "My clothes mouldy?" "She lives here," said Ginger. From the shelter of a hedge they watched the house. "You'd better go and get 'em, then," said William unfeelingly. "How?" said Ginger. "Well, you sold 'em. I didn't sell 'em. Sh! Look!" The door of the Johnsons' home was opening. A small boy came out. "He's dressed in my clothes," said William excitedly. "Get 'em my clothes." His eye brightened, and into his face came a radiant look as of one beholding some dear friend after a long absence. "My clothes!" Ginger advanced to the small boy and smiled his anxious, fatuous, mirthless smile. "Like to come and play with me?" he said. "Yeth, pleath," said the boy, returning the friendly smile. "Well, you can come with me," said Ginger ingratiatingly. He followed Ginger through the stile, and gave a shout of derision when he saw William crouching behind the hedge. "Oh, look at him," he said, "dressed up funny." A masterly plan had come into William's head. He led the party to the next field, to the disused barn, which in their normal happy life, that now seemed to him so far away, served as castle or pirate ship. "Now," he said, "we're going to play as soldiers, and you come and say you want to join the army." "But I don't," said the small boy solemnly. "That would be a story." "Never mind," said William patiently. "You must pretend you want to join the army. Then you must take off your clothes and leave 'em with me, and this boy will pretend to be the doctor, and he'll tell you if you're strong enough, you know. He'll look at your lungs and things, and then, well, that's all. Now I'll give you the half-crown just for a present if you play it properly." "All right," said the boy brightly, beginning to take off his coat. "You've got bad lungs and a bad heart and bad legs and bad arms and bad ears and a bad head," said the doctor, "and I'm afraid you can't be a soldier." "All right," said the boy brightly. "Don't want to be. Now I'll put on my clothes." He came out to the back of the barn, where he had left his clothes, and burst into a howl. "Oh, he's taken my clothes, took my clothes, he's taken my, oh, mama, he's taken my clothes." His shirt fluttering in the wind, he went howling down the road. Ginger went to the ditch, whence William's gesticulating arms could be seen. "Quick, William, quick!" gasped Ginger. William arose, holding his ancient Briton costume in his hand. He was clothed in a tweed suit, a very, very small tweed suit. The waistcoat would not button across him, and the sleeve came only a little way below his elbow. "William," gasped Ginger, "it's not yours." William's face was pale with horror. "It looked like mine," he said in a sepulchral voice, "but it's not mine." A babel of voices arose. "Where are they, lovey?" "Boo, boo, they've took my clothes." "Wait till I get 'em, that's all. Never mind, darling, Ma'll learn 'em." With grim despair they saw what seemed to them an army of women running up the hill, and with them a howling boy in a fluttering shirt. One of the women carried a broom. "Run, William!" gasped Ginger. William flung his skin into the ditch and ran. Though his suit was so tight that he could only progress in little leaps and bounds, he progressed with remarkable speed. At last, exhausted and breathless, he walked round to the side entrance of his home and stood in the hall. He could hear his mother's voice from the drawing room. "Miss Carter's been ringing up all the afternoon," she was saying. "She seems to think that William took away one of the costumes after the rehearsal. I told her I was sure William wouldn't do such a thing. My dear," in his father's voice, "you do make the most rash statements." William entered slowly. His father and mother and sister turned and stared at him in silence. "William!" gasped his mother. "What are you wearing?" William made a desperate effort to carry off the situation. "You know, everyone says how fast I'm growing. I keep growing out of my things." "Mother!" screamed Ethel from the window. "There's a lot of awful women coming through the gate, and an awful little boy in a shirt." William was brushed and combed and dressed in his best suit. His weekday suit had been, with great trouble and at great expense, brought back from Mrs. Johnson, and taken from the person of her eldest son, and was now being disinfected from any possible germ which might have infested the person of her eldest son. Mrs. Johnson and her indignant younger son had been, with great difficulty, and also at great expense, soothed and appeased. William had eaten the bread and water considered in the circumstances a suitable meal for the prodigal son, with that inward fury, but with that outward appearance of intense enjoyment that he always fondly imagined made his family feel foolish. He was not to leave the garden again that day. He was to go to bed an hour before his usual time, but that left him now half an hour to dispose of in the garden. Through the window William could see his father reclining in a deck chair and reading the evening paper. William considered that his father had, that evening, shown himself conspicuously lacking in tact and sympathy and generosity, but William did not bear malice, and he knew that such qualities are not to be expected in grown-ups. Moreover, his father was the only human being within sight, and William felt disinclined for active pursuits. He went out to his father and sat down on the grass in front of him. "Oh, about that man what had his legs bit off by a shark, father. What I promised to tell you about, well, it begins when he starts out in the ship of mystery." William's father tried to continue to read his paper. Finding it impossible, he folded it up. "1 minute, William. How long is there before you go to bed?" "Only about half an hour," said William reproachfully. "But I can tell you quite a lot in that time, and I can go on tomorrow if I don't finish. You'll like it. Ginger and me liked it awfully. Well, he starts off in the ship of mystery, and why it's called the ship of mystery is because every night there's ghostly moanings and rattlings of chain, and one day the man what the tale's about went down to get something he'd forgot in the middle of the night, and he saw a Norfolk figure dressed in a long black cloak with gleaming eyes, and just as he was running away it put out a Norfolk skinny hand and said in a Norfolk voice—" William's father looked wildly round for escape and saw none. Nemesis had overtaken him. With a groan he gave himself up for lost, and William, already thrilled to his very soul by his story, the memories of his exciting day already dim, pursued his ruthless recital. End of Chapter 14. End of William IV by Richmal Crompton.